Welcome everybody to a Tilt webinar with Maureen Gassert, making AI work for language teachers. Today is Thursday, the 15th of June, 2023, and it's 8 o'clock in the UK, British summertime. And we're really happy to be welcoming people from this time zone and from other time zones as well. So my name is Helen Myers. I'm chair of the London branch of the Association for Language Learning. And we always mention the fact that we've been very grateful in the past to the help that we've had from Hikefilp and from Linguiscope for helping us to put these things together. But the person who's really done the most to gather fantastic speakers to come and talk to us is Joe Dale. So I'm going to ask Joe just to give his own introduction now and tell us what is available, what he can offer. Later on, he'll be introducing our presenter. But first of all, over to you, Joe.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Helen. That's fantastic. So I've been quite busy recently, mostly talking about AI and ChatGPT, but in the chat, I thought I would mention again the PPLI podcast called and he's forgotten how, MFL Teachers Talk. There we are. MFL Teachers Talk is the podcast for the Post-Primary Languages Ireland organization. And we published a new episode very recently, a couple of weeks ago, around inclusion. So do have a look at that. And I put the link in the chat. I'm sure we can share that on the site as well. The other thing I wanted to mention as well, or the second thing I wanted to mention was I'm running a 4-part webinar series called Resource Creation with ChatGPT, a game changer for language teachers. So obviously it's very apt that I'm talking about this tonight. And that is in collaboration with Avant Assessment, who are a very large company in the US who are helping me to promote it and do the admin and so on and so forth. And I'm hoping that collaboration will carry on for the foreseeable future. So if you're interested and you want to know more about ChatGPT, you can either sign up for individual sessions or all 4 sessions. If you can't attend live, then you can then just wait until you receive the recording. So each one is going to be recorded. You get the presentation as well and all the prompts I'm going to be using. But if you can't wait, you can actually purchase the pre-recorded webinars from May when I ran it previously on my own. And we had over 165 people registering from literally all over the world. If you can't wait and you want the recording straight away, then you can get them straight away. But the first one happened on the 13th, as in this week. The next one is the 20th, the next one, the 27th, and the last one on the 29th of June. So if you fancy coming along and learn lots and lots of information about ChatGPT, do that, please. And I'd also like to finally give a big plug for a Facebook group, which I started literally 5 days ago, so on Sunday, and it's called Language Teaching with AI. And there are 900, as of right now, 908 members in 5 days. So it just shows how much interest there is in AI and ChatGPT. And it's a really lovely community so far. And I'm doing ever so well, I think, in making sure that people who have not filled in the questions or complied with the rules, they're not coming in until they've done that. And we've still got 900 people. If I hadn't done that, we'd have about 1,300 people. So trying to make sure that we build a really lovely, nurturing community, because that's what we all want. Okay, so back to Helen, and can't wait to get started on this webinar this evening.
Thank you very much, Joe. I just want to do a plug for the Association for Language Learning. If you're already a member, please use the chat now to say you are a member and to urge others to join. I think whatever country you're in, it's really good to be part of an association which represents you as a languages teacher. And so please do join us if you're not already a member. We're coming soon is another Tilt webinar, which by the way, technology and language teaching, which Joe has invited Christos to come and talk about teaching ideas with TikTok, and we haven't had one on that, have we yet, Joe? So I'm really looking forward to that as well. That's on Wednesday.
Great presenter as well. Can't wait. Yeah, sorry, Helen.
Right, so that's Wednesday, the 28th of June. So if you go onto our website, you'll be able to sign up for that. And then we've got in November the language show. It's a virtual event which is brought through Linguiscope and Jonathan Scott, and there we are going to be doing another of our show and tell sessions. Joe and I will be coordinating that, and I'll be talking about the GCSEs exams. So that's nothing to do with technology at all, but you're very welcome to come to that. We've already got a date for our event on Saturday, the January the 13th at the British Film Institute on the South Bank, a really prestigious venue. So please put that date in your diary. And the association has its national conference on Friday the 8th to Saturday the 9th of March 2024. We're very close to getting a venue for that. So on our website, AWL.org.uk, you can see all the webinars. I think this is webinar number 189 that we've had in our history. So of those, about 100 are from Tilt. So we've done really well on that. So now over to Joe to introduce our guest.
Fantastic. Thank you, Helen. So I'm really, really excited about Maureen Gassert-Lamb's presentation this evening. Maureen and I have been following each other for a while now. I think we have a shared interest in technology and languages. And as I sort of suggested earlier, I'm very much interested in AI at the moment. That seems to be the hot topic. And I could see that Maureen was tweeting lots and lots about AI and different AI tools. I watched the IELTS webinar recently, I think last week, if I remember correctly. Everything's moving so quickly at the moment. But anyway, I was very, very impressed by Maureen's presentation. And it's not going to be an absolute copycat of that one. If you've seen that one already, there's going to be some different elements to the one we're doing tonight. Maureen is a Latin teacher, but the topics we're going to be looking at today are going to be relevant to any language and any language teacher. And I can say hand on heart that you're going to learn a lot tonight, even if you're already into AI, because there's lots of new tools. And we do recommend that if you want to ask questions, you can put those in the chat, and then we will naturally go through those questions at natural pauses when relevant. And can't wait to get started. So thank you so much, Maureen, for agreeing to do this. Can you tell us where you are in the States at the moment?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's 3 p.m. here, and it is about 80 degrees and humid in Simsbury, Connecticut. So it's a little different. And I just wanted to put in the chat one more time the link to the slide deck, because I am a firm believer. I'm super visual, so I love looking at a slide deck when I'm listening to a presentation. And throughout the slide deck, all of the images are also linked. So feel free to click on an image, start to explore. And that's my number one. If you take away nothing else from this presentation, take some time to be curious about these things. Take some time to explore and play with it and see what you can do with it. I think that's something that's really important about AI. We are all pretty much newbies at this. I've only been playing around with it since November. And I think that a lot of us are brand new to this. And whenever you come across something new, it can be a little bit scary. And I found this picture online, and it reminded me of a lot of the feedback I was getting online, which is the fear of technology is strong with this one, because, oh my goodness, are robots taking over the world? Are all my students going to be cheating all the time? Like, what is this thing with AI? And there are some ways we can talk about, especially if you have questions around AI and cheating. But I would say that whenever you have something new, it can be really easy to be afraid. But I would urge you to be curious, because there is so much that you can do with this. I like to see this from rather, okay, this can be an asset to me as a teacher rather than a deficit. That's not to say that it's 100% accurate. And that's not to say that it'll be used for good things all the time. But I think that there are so many possibilities for saving time for teachers and for allowing teachers to give more focused feedback to students by using AI. And so that's my little spiel at the beginning, but we're going to get right into it. And so the big overarching question we're going to try to answer is, how can we use AI to help teachers? A lot of people are experimenting on how to use it with students, but I think that it can be really helpful too as teachers to use it. And so this is my little graphic of, okay, so we use it, and I keep cautioning my students and fellow teachers that have it think with you, not think for you. I think whenever you're using technology, it can be tempting to kind of let it do its thing, but especially with something like generative AI, you can redo stuff all the time. If you put something into ChatGPT and it is not what you want, you can have it regenerate, you can ask it in a different way, you can do all sorts of things so that you can get it to do what you want it to do. And so it can generate writing, it can generate films, it can generate chat, it can generate pictures, it can generate all sorts of things. So really, it's amazing that this technology has made it so that the sky feels like the limit sometimes. But again, I would caution that yes, that case is true. 95% of the time, you're going to get accuracy. It's much better than it was. Previously, when I started first using it in November, it was terrible with Latin. It was okay with Spanish and it was getting there with French, but for Latin, oof, it was having issues. And so now though, it's beautiful with Latin. It's not perfect, but it's really, really good. So it is learning and growing all the time because it's learning from what we're putting into it as teachers. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to make resources using generative AI. And so one of the big questions I have, okay, yes, you're telling me that you can use it to do things. What are some of those things that I can do with it? Because I'm not really sure. I know it can do stuff, but what exactly is it that it's doing? And so let's talk about the big one, ChatGPT. I imagine most people have heard about ChatGPT. Well, ChatGPT is still really good. And it had a big update in May. So it's even better than it had been before. However, one of the things about ChatGPT that makes it limited is that it is currently text-based. It can make charts, but it can't make images through ChatGPT itself. It can through other things, but it can't for that. So it's completely text-based. But now you have different Chrome extensions or plugins you can use to make it do other things, which is pretty cool. I still think that in terms of languages, ChatGPT is one of the best I've seen for interpreting languages. So for example, if I want to write something in Latin, I am either going to use Canva, Magic Write, or ChatGPT most of the time, because I think that the writing is really good. And it also has been fed a lot of writing, so it could give it back to you a lot. Some things about ChatGPT, you can have a free account. Sometimes it was taking a little while to get an account, but now it seems to be, it's been up all the days in the last week for me. So hopefully that's a good sign of things to come. And there are free and premium options. I've opted for the premium option. It is $20 a month, which is a little bit expensive. But the cool thing about that is that now you can browse with Bing. And if you have not checked out Bing's AI, they were the big one that searches the internet first, and they are very good. It is Bing and Google Bard, I would say, are the kind of big ones for searching the internet with AI. There are some limitations with Google, I would say, and similar with Bing, but they're getting much better. And so for ChatGPT, one of the cool things is that you can have these plugins if you have a premium account. And here are some of the plugin options that you can use. So if you have the premium account, you can do an Ask Your PDF. And what that means you can ask a document questions, and you can ask a document questions in multiple languages, which is really cool. And it's a great way. You can have students craft questions. You can craft questions. You can ask it to create questions based on that document. There's a lot of different ways that you can interact with it. Another one is Show Me Diagrams. So right now, ChatGPT does make diagrams, but they're not super easy to export. You can copy it, but it's going to give you a bunch of gobbledygook if you put it into a Google Doc right now that you then have to resort. Show Me Diagrams will allow you to actually download the diagram itself, which is pretty cool. Link Reader is sort of like Ask Your PDF, but it's reading a link. So for example, if you have a link to a news article or something like that, you can use Link Reader. Scholar AI is something you can use if you're doing research on something, if you want to find sources for something. My students were doing research on Pompeian women. And so for me, I was using Scholar AI to help me find resources for my students so they could look things up. So it can be really cool. And I think sometimes there's accessibility issues with resources, but that's usually on the resources end. If you can get into that, that's really, really cool. Video Insights is great. You can use Vimeo or YouTube and get summaries or tidbits from a video if you just don't have time to watch it. Although I would say if you're showing a video in class, you should probably watch the relevant portion that you're going to be showing, but it could also give you, maybe if you got a summary of it, you could help you create an assessment for it or something like that. This is something brand new I found out about this week. So something I have been wanting from AI is the ability to speak a language to AI and have it speak back answers to you. And this has not been super possible, in at least not from my understanding, until really the last few weeks. So what you can do if you want to speak and have spoken responses from ChatGPT is you can load the Speak plugin in ChatGPT and then use the voice control for ChatGPT, which is a Chrome extension. And then that will allow you to speak back and forth in multiple languages. So that just blew my mind. I was very excited about that. So if you want to play around with that, it's really cool. And everything should be linked here if you want to check it out. There's some other fun ones that I was playing around with students, Expedia and Kayak. I know sometimes as teachers, we're like, oh, we can plan a trip. It's really fun. And so that can be a fun way to do a trip planning thing in ChatGPT, or even Instacart, how to buy things. Instacart will also do different like ingredients for things and stuff like that. You can look things up for that. This is not on there, but just as an aside for busy teaching folks, if you use Chef GPT, it actually will generate food from whatever you have in your pantry or refrigerator. Again, not for education, but for busy teachers, it can be really helpful. I've done it a couple times. So I highly recommend checking it out. It's fun. All right. So any questions on how the ChatGPT plugins works?
Nothing so far, but I was just put in the chat about the voice control for ChatGPT. You can just use that with the extension. You don't need the Speak plugin.
Oh, perfect.
So with a free account,
Thank you.
can just, because I've been using that a lot recently. So yeah, it works just with the extension. It's an amazing plugin.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Joe. That's really helpful. Cool. All right. Well, feel free to put questions in the chat if you have any questions. Next, we're going to talk about a couple of Chrome extensions. I'm a huge Google Chrome fan. I find that it really helps me to stay organized. I love that you can now make the tabs all beautiful colors and that sort of thing. But I love Chrome extensions because they just save time. And there's a couple that are pretty self-explanatory. Merlin ChatGPT allows you to chat while you're on Chrome. That's basically what you do. So you're on a website or something, you're looking something up and you want to use ChatGPT, the Merlin will help you do that. Talkberry is a newer one, but again, that's a chat back and forth, but it says that it has capabilities for speech. It's not super clear to me which languages it is going to support, but it says it is expanding. So it may be supporting more languages. Similar voice wave. And so if that's something that you're interested in doing, I know for a lot of people, especially if you're writing or something, and maybe you're writing and you're not the greatest typist, having something where it can kind of transcribe for you can be really, really helpful for AI. Another one is Snack Prompt. Snack Prompt is great because what it does is it helps you look through prompts that have worked before and what have other people have used, because I know that can be part of the challenge here. One of the things I find from using all of this generative AI is that the power of asking really good questions is going to matter in the future. And so while we can use things like Snack Prompt for now, or there's all sorts of Prompt Storm, all prompt generator, all those things, I think one of the things we're going to have to teach students is how to ask a good question and how to create a really good prompt. And so something like Snack Prompt, though, can give you some examples of that as you're thinking about it. So if you want to check that out, that can be really fun. Web ChatGPT is ChatGPT, but again, searching the web. So kind of like Bing or Google Bard. YouTube Summary is similar to what we talked about before, but this one, again, is a Chrome extension. Fancy GPT can do a bunch of different kind of AI assistant things, which is pretty cool. And Full Picture is something I just started working with. In addition to teaching Latin, I'm also a digital citizenship teacher. And so Full Picture gives you the background on any website you're visiting. I think that can be super helpful because a lot of times I end up talking to students about why websites may have bias or they may have something going on. There may be some sort of reason why this website's presenting things in such a way. And so it helps students to get a fuller picture of what the background behind that website is, and helps our students to be good digital citizens. So those are some fun Chrome extensions. Again, feel free to click on them, explore if you're curious. If you're not a Google Chrome user, it's a great product and it's free. So that's really fun. So check it out. Any questions about Chrome extensions before I move on?
No questions. I was just going to say you
Okay.
could use these Chrome extensions within Microsoft Edge as well, couldn't you?
Oh, you can?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So what you
wonderful.
do is you go to Edge, you go to the Chrome Web Store, and then there's a little blue button at the top in the middle, and you can enable extensions to work within Edge. Because essentially
that's
Edge is
great.
built on Chromium, which is the sort of the code behind Chrome.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. Nice.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say, I haven't tried all of these, but I've tried the YouTube summary one. It's absolutely brilliant. So, for
Oh
example,
my gosh.
you
Yeah.
can get a YouTube clip. You can generate the summary, and then you can ask it to make multiple choice questions for Edpuzzle, for example.
Yep.
Take those questions and put them into Edpuzzle. It's a great time saver. But if you have like an hour-long video and you don't want to watch it, just or you don't know if it's worth watching, if you use YouTube summary, you get a really good idea of what it's all about, and then you can decide in a more sort of educated way whether it's worth your time to watch it or not. So it's a brilliant Chrome extension. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yes, I totally agree. So another thing that I have found that it's super helpful for is lesson planning, and two that are not ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT all the time, but I just wanted to put some things out there that are not ChatGPT, because I know that not everyone wants to use ChatGPT, and that's fine. And some of these are more focused, which can be really helpful too. So for example, Twee is one that a lot of teachers at my school are using, and I've been using too for lesson planning. And right now it's free. And I've tried to write under all of the resources, whether or not they're free, or if they're free for now, because oftentimes these things are changing. And so it is such a new kind of brave new world of this sort of thing that it could change from one day to the next. So I just wanted to be really cautious about that. I'm really enjoying Twee. And Anna says she's enjoying Twee too. I think it's great for lesson planning. And it's not as if I'm necessarily going to use it for every single lesson, but for me, it's great starting off point at least. And also, the more information you give it, the better. So I would say, I'll show you an example in a second, but again, the more specific you can make a prompt, the better. Magic School is one that I just read about a couple days ago that's also really cool. So I would definitely check those out. Again, these are more lesson planning ones, which is really fun. And so here's one that I did: create a lesson plan for 2 45-minute class periods about Perpetua for Latin students. And here's what I got. I got a really good lesson plan. I think that it gave me a good objective. It gave me a good introduction. It gave me the reading and translation, some group discussions, even a homework assignment. Then it gave me day 2. And again, I love how it was chunked off by times. I thought that was really, really helpful. And then it gave me a fun kind of role play activity, which was cool. Then it gave me what materials I needed, and finally, how I might assess students for this, which is really fun. Any questions about what I'm sharing here?
Not so far. I would just again say about Twee, it's brilliant. And if you put a text in which is in a different language, it should respond in that language as well. And it also has an image to text option. So if you take a screenshot of an image, including text, you can put that in, and it will then do an OCR on it, and it will regard it as text. So that's another nice feature as well. I am asking people in the chat to put in questions, but I think probably everyone's just wowed at the moment and just wants to sit back and watch. So yeah, but it's all good. Thank you so much. It's great.
Oh, no, thank you. And I didn't know that about the OCR. That's awesome. I think that that's going to be a big thing too, is that when we have it so that it can read an image as text, that's so helpful. And that's going to be so helpful too for documents that are difficult to scan. I know for Latin, there are some documents I would love to put in there and just have it so that I can play around with it. So I'm excited to play with that. Very cool. Another thing that can be fun is for syllabus creation. And so here are 2 that I've been playing around with: lessonplans.ai and Teachology. For a lot of these, I've been doing kind of the free trial, just play around with it and see what's going on. But here would be an example of a syllabus. So let's say I am creating, and I just put in syllabus for Latin 1 course because I was really curious to see what it would come up with. So this one I did not put in detail. If I were actually to do it, I would probably put in more detail, but this was just kind of a fun, let's see what it'll do for me. And so it gave me the course title, the description, the objectives. They gave me course outlines for 13 weeks. I didn't share all of that because I didn't think it was super relevant, but it was really impressive. And oops, I skipped a page. Oh, that's fine. At the end, it also gave me what are the standards? How are you assessed? It was really cool. It gave me so much information. But like I said before, the more information you can put in a prompt, the better. So if I had said, for example, create a syllabus for a Latin 1 course using the Cambridge Latin course for 20 weeks, it could do that, which is so cool. And I think that for a lot of teachers, even if it's not what you finally use, I think it can give you a lot of great ideas about how to kind of pace things out. So that's something that might be fun to play around with. Grading. Grading, I think I like to think of grading as more giving feedback to students because it makes me feel better about it. But when you're thinking about grading can take up a lot of time. And ChatGPT, Gradescope, Copy, and Snowden could all help with that. And so something I've been doing with ChatGPT, and I actually have used Gradescope as well, which is actually run by Turnitin. You can create a question, you can have it create a question, or you can create a question. You can have a rubric, and then you can put in student work, and it will give you feedback. So that's really cool. There's already AI. I know for Snowden, it will grade things like short answer questions and multiple choice questions, but I think there's already a lot of animated things to do with that. Automated things to do with that. But grading essays, it can be one of the most challenging things. Now, I wouldn't say just trust whatever it says and go with it, but I would say it can be a great starting off point for feedback. You can even create a comment bank and say, okay, here's student work, here's a comment bank, where would that go? So by comment bank, I mean, you need to look at this thing, you need to look at this, this thesis paragraph, you need to look at your evidence here, things like that, just more comments that you can put throughout and it will give it back to you. It's really cool. And I showed my students how I could do this and they thought it was really interesting too, which was fun. And the interesting thing too is oftentimes we are doing presentational writing, which means students are getting feedback before they're turning something in as a final draft. So wouldn't it be fun if students could get feedback before they hand in their final draft? And maybe they could even give themselves feedback. There's a couple of things on here that can do that as well, which is pretty cool. And so here's one of the essay grading things I did. I asked it to create an essay question and rubric for an AP Latin essay comparing Virgil to Caesar. It did a very good job. This is very not specific because I know not everyone's a Latin teacher. And so it's really interesting. And I say here, I had to take a screenshot of the chart because I didn't have my plugin installed. But if you have the chart plugin installed where you can copy the chart, you can do that very quickly. But I just took a screenshot of it because I couldn't do that. And again, you can modify the rubric if you want to have a 5-point rubric, if you want to have a 1-point rubric, if you want to have things worth different things. The more information that you give it, the more you will get from it. So that's something to keep in mind. Editing. I don't know about you, but I often do my best editing after I've already hit send on an email. And I don't like that when that happens because I'm like, oh no. And so using something to help edit my work can be really helpful. And I write in Latin and ancient Greek a lot, and it's great to get feedback on that. I can only do it for Latin right now, but if I figure out how to make it work for ancient Greek, I will, because that is one of my Achilles heels is typos in ancient Greek. But using something like Quillbot, which is available in multiple languages, or the language tool, again, this can give you feedback on your writing. And this could give you feedback on writing. It could just check over something for you. I know that when I'm writing things like letters of recommendations for students, I want to make sure that that's really tight when I'm sending that out to people. So I want to make sure there are no glaring errors. So it's a great way to just toss it in there and say, hey, do you have any suggestions? Any errors there? I know a lot of us probably use Grammarly, but Grammarly, unfortunately, is not available in multiple languages. So these are some good alternatives. And I was playing around with Language Tool, and it seems to be a good alternative from what I can see about it. Okay, I've been talking a lot. Are there any questions? I'm going to go into more things.
There aren't any questions, but I was just going to
Okay.
say that for proofreading, I don't know if you know the Chrome extension called Edit GPT, but it's really, really
No, I
nice.
don't.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Edit GPT.
So I've been presenting about that recently in different sessions. So basically what you do is you install the extension, and then in ChatGPT, you write, well, there's a few codes you can write, but basically you write proofread this. So proofread one word, space this, colon, then you paste in your text. And then what happens is it will then highlight all the bits it doesn't like. So it will highlight the bits in red it doesn't like, and it will put what it thinks it should be in green. And then what you can do is you can highlight, you can select the red and the green section, and then click on the tick to then change it so it's just green. So I was suggesting in different presentations that you could use this as like a whole class feedback session. So with permission, you could put in the students' work and then ask the students why it is that Edit GPT had some bits in red and why it thinks that the green bit is better, and then have a class discussion about that, a little bit like live marking with a visualizer. So same sort of idea, and then you can then, as I say, select it and then click the tick, and then it will then go green. So you can see the percentage of the text which has been changed based on Edit GPT. And yeah, it's fantastic. The only thing that you need to do once you've written proofread this is you need to click on enable editing. So it's always there. It always says editing disabled, and then you have to remember to click on that and to enable editing. But then once you finish doing your proofreading, you have to remember to disable it. Otherwise, everything you put into it, it will proofread it for you, which is not what you want. But it's a really, really nice free extension.
Cool. I'm going to check that out. Thank you so much for the recommendation. That's awesome. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is assessment creation. That can take a really long time. I've been playing around with Prep AI, and it can create all different sorts of question types. And I know that I was using Conquer for a while, and Conquer is also very good. And Conquer right now is free, which is also great. I love when these things are free for now. Again, we never know if it's going to change, but I think Conquer was one of the first AI things I was using in a beta version. And it's just really cool. So feel free to check that out and see if it gives you ideas for assessment. Another thing that I think AI can be used for are study resources. And so QChat and Quizlet, if that's something you're using, it can be really, really helpful. You do need a Quizlet account, so you can't use it with your students under 13. If you want to learn more about QChat, later in July, I will be doing a session on QChat at the Quizlet Unconference. So feel free to come by and check that out. That's been something I've been working on a lot. And I think that especially because it works with multiple languages, QChat can be really, really helpful for creating quick flashcards and things like that. So that'll be really fun. Another one that I just started playing with is Cogni. And Cogni is kind of, it will create resources. It won't create flashcards like QChat will, but it will create resources for students, more personalized learning resources. Again, for this one, an account is required, so you need to sign into it, but it's something that I think is going to be a really big part of using generative AI, is creating these personalized, differentiated resources for students. I think that the potential to create these quickly and easily is really amazing. So I'm hopeful that that's what will come out of this. So first, we're going to talk about interpretive activities. So besides all those other things we do as language teachers, we are doing interpretive activities. We're doing interpersonal activities. We're doing presentational activities, and we're probably doing investigative activities. But here are some ideas you can possibly use for this. So for interpretive activities, there's just so much you can do with generative AI. Interpretive reading is a big one. Drop chat, so much fun. You can chat with a book or a PDF or a website. Oh my gosh, I wish I had had this when I was in graduate school, scouring through books, like, where did I find this passage that I need for my thesis? I think that drop chat can be really fun, especially if students haven't done it before. And so it helps with the reading part, and kind of, it can give you some feedback on that. Diffit is something I just started using, but it is so cool. I think that a lot of us as language teachers find that it's very helpful to create tiered readings for students, right? And so Diffit is something that can create tiered readings in a flash like that. And it can do it for multiple languages. So Diffit is really fun, and it is free for now. And chat with any PDF. That can be really, really helpful. Again, there are free and premium options there. But for interpretive reading questions, you can have students read it, and then you can read it, and you can help it get questions for you to ask students. Or for even using Diffit, just making different types of readings for students. I think that can be really valuable. Story creation. I teach with comprehensible input, so I write a lot of stories in Latin and ancient Greek. For this, this was such a game changer when I started playing with it. Right now, some of these work for English, some of them work for other languages. I generally use ChatGPT because I'm finding that right now that's the best one for Latin, but some of these will work with other languages, or if they don't already, they're transitioning to work with other languages than English. So it's really important. So for this, again, be as specific as possible. I can give it a list of words. So let's say I list 20 words. Here are 20 words in Latin. Create a story. I did it the other day with my department. I said, create a story about a sad cow. And it created a very simple story. But then I said, okay, now create the story again and do it all in the present tense. And it created the story again. And now I said, okay, now create the story and use only, I use different word order and stuff like that. So it will regenerate responses depending on how many details. And by the end, I had a beautiful comprehensible story that I could have possibly used on something like an assessment, because it would have been comprehensible for my students. And that's something that usually takes me, an hour to write. And it was done in 5 minutes, which was amazing. I told my students that ChatGPT had written it and that I had told it what to write. And they enjoyed the story about the sad cow. But I think it can be something that can save time, especially for writing things for assessments and things like that. I know that some of my colleagues were also using it to write passages for assessment, which is so cool. Ooh, here's a good question. If you are completely new to ChatGPT as a language teacher, where would you recommend to start? So Caroline, that's a great question. I would actually start probably with ChatGPT. And I would start by, what are some things you need? If you wanted to create a story in a target language, maybe you could start with that. Maybe you want it to start, maybe there's particular vocabulary you could use. Another one that I think is super accessible and free for educators is Canva. Canva has Magic Write, but it also has image creation, which is great because then, someone's mentioning that. Yes. And so for the image generator, I wanted my students to come up with a couple of sentences, and we've been talking about pigs. So I created a picture of pigs having a big party and eating dinner, and they had to write some sentences in Latin about that, and it did it for me. And it gave me multiple options of these pigs having a party. And so it was pretty cool. You can really play around with it though. If you want students to be interacting with it, you can do it that way. So I'd say Canva and ChatGPT would be really good kind of jumping off places to start. Do you have any that you would recommend, Joe?
I was just about to put in the chat. I would recommend that people watch the first Tilt webinar that we did back in February with the amazing Julia Morris. And then we also had 9 5-minute show and tell sessions after that. So it's a 2-hour presentation, but it's already had 1,500 views. So it really does go through like the basics. It captures our first excitement really about sharing ideas and what it can do and what have you. So we do appreciate that maybe some of these ideas here are quite advanced, and so for those people who are new to ChatGPT, we would definitely recommend watching that Tilt webinar. And then there's also a follow-up one, I think it was a week later, on my YouTube channel, as well as on the AWL London website. And Julia very kindly has shared a really comprehensive Word document as well, which will help get you started. But everyone's in this together, as Maureen has said, everyone's in this together, everyone's learning together, but we're looking for a whole range of different ideas. We all have different contexts. So we really appreciate seeing the more cutting edge ideas, but at the same time, we appreciate that not everyone is at that point. And therefore, I would highly recommend the Tilt webinar. And I'm just about to put the link in the chat as well. Cool.
I'd also say, if you're thinking about ideas and brainstorming, I'm super happy to give you feedback as well. So I'm going to share my email at the end. And so if there's something very specific you're looking for, I'm happy to try to get you in the right direction as well. But the webinar sounds great. I think I'm going to recommend that to some of my faculty. That sounds like a great starting off point. Interpretive listening is something that I think can be really powerful. Speechify is something you can use for interpretive listening, which is really cool. Again, you can create target language speech that students can listen to, and you can create it with a variety of voices. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your voice. I think that can be really powerful too, because when students are listening to a language, especially if they're listening to language used around the world in different places, it can be really helpful to hear a wide variety of accents spoken with that language and a wide variety of ways that language is used. So that can be something that's really helpful. Interpretive watching, Edify is similar to the YouTube summary. It works with YouTube and Vimeo, or you can upload videos as well. And Synthesia can be really fun for interpretive watching. Synthesia, you can also make videos, which is really cool. There's a lot of different things you can do. But again, that can be a lot of work. But if it's something you're interested in doing, or your students are interested in doing, it's worth checking out. Interpersonal texting and responding. That's something really fun. Super chat, oh my gosh, I had so much fun playing with this. It is an AI virtual chat. I got to talk to, I can't remember now. I talked to somebody in Latin for a while. And then I went back onto ChatGPT, which is even better at Latin. And I said, I want ChatGPT to pretend to be Julius Caesar, and I want to ask you questions in Latin. And it said, sure, let's go. And I spoke to it for over an hour. And I asked, all sorts of questions about, his relationship with Cleopatra and him winning the battles and stuff like that. It was really fun. And probably one of the nerdiest things I've done in a very long time, but super fun to talk back and forth in Latin with a person from history. And so you can do this for any language, which is really cool. Plato is another thing you can do with chatting back and forth as well. And so these are both options, but again, you can do it with ChatGPT too. Interpersonal speaking and listening. Speak is supposed to be the gold standard with this. Unfortunately, it is a waitlist only now. I've been on the waitlist for a little while. I have not heard back from them. And so this is something that actually listens to you speaking and responds, which is so cool. Sufi is something I just started playing around with because I couldn't get on Speak. And it seems to do similar things. I think Speak has more in-depth. Speak also, I believe, was something that was working with different technology. So I'm not sure which is better because I haven't been able to get on Speak, but they're both ones you could check out for that. Presentational speaking. So Udly right now is apparently the gold standard for this, to the point where people who are Toastmasters are using it to give feedback on their presentation while speaking. And so it'll tell you kind of what you need to do differently, if there are words that you repeat all the time, if there are different intonations you should change, if there's something you can kind of tighten up, it will give you feedback on that. So it's a free trial right now and then paid, but it sounds like a really interesting tool to play around with for presentational speaking feedback. I know that's something that I do with my students. Oftentimes they need feedback from presentations, and I never want them to go into a presentation without having received feedback first. So oftentimes I have them videotape themselves, and then I will give them feedback. But imagine if they didn't have, if it's stressful for them to share that with me, if they could do it for an app, that would be really cool for them. And so I think that might be a really fun option if that's something that ends up working for your students. Presentational writing. I think these are two big ones. Grammarly Go, unfortunately, it only works with English. It's still really good, but it only works with English. Now, as a Latin teacher, a lot of my students' essays are in English about the Latin, so it does a good job with those, but I know for other languages that might be a no-go. So one that works well with other languages is actually Jasper. Again, this is a free trial and then paid, but it's something you can play around with and see if it might work, giving feedback again for that presentational writing. Again, with a lot of these, you could also use ChatGPT. These are just kind of more focused ones. In investigative tasks, one of the things that I think people find disconcerting about ChatGPT is that it does not go right to the internet functionality. Perplexity not only will give you internet resources, also it is approved by what is it called? Oh, KIPA, the organization in the United States that says, yes, if you're under 13, you can actually use this because you're not giving in any of your personal information. So ChatGPT, it technically should not be used by students under 13, but Perplexity can be because it's approved. There's a couple of these that you can't because students are giving their information. So I would say as you're looking through these, if you teach younger students, be really aware. I'm not sure if the laws are different in the UK or wherever you are right now, but I'd be really aware of what the regulations are around internet usage and your students. So that's interesting. Oh, thank you. AudioPen is another audio tool. Thank you so much. And Chris said, PowerPoint gave my coaching tips on my presentation. Yes, the PowerPoint AI is really interesting. I thought that was, I was playing around with that too. It looks like Canva may be coming out with one of those too, which I love. Everything Canva's been coming out with AI, I'm like, yay, because it's free for teachers too. And it's really, really helpful. Sammy asks, can you learn a new language from scratch using Speak? I believe that's what they claim. I don't know because they haven't let me off the wait list yet, but if they ever let me off the wait list, I'm happy to let you know. Again, Cite is like Perplexity. Right now, because Perplexity is free, I would use Perplexity, but Cite is similar. It will help you with searching the internet to find resources. And Cite, unlike Perplexity, which will find all sorts of internet resources, Cite is focused on scholarly resources. So if you're looking for scholarly resources with students, Cite could be a really good place to go for that. Okay, so finished a little early, but that's okay because I'm sure you have questions. I also wanted to share my Twitter handle and I wanted to share my email just in case you had any questions and I could help you out. I'm also going to share the link to the presentation here again so that if you didn't get it for some reason, you can have it. And feel free to share it widely. It is not proprietary. It's just a bunch of resources. So feel free to share. And again, I'm here for questions, so let me know if you have any.
Well, what can I say, Maureen? That was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Oh, my word. Yeah. I said in the chat, you're on the cutting edge. You're absolutely on the cutting edge, if not on the leading edge, as one says. Yeah, I was just going to mention about AudioPen. So AudioPen,
oh, cool.
I've been all over it since it first came out, which was March 2023.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
So for free, you can create 10 notes, but you can always delete the notes and just keep using it. Basically, what it allows you to do, a little bit like voice control for ChatGPT, you can use your voice to speak into the interface. And what it does is it will then make a concise summary of what you've said, plus it will produce the original transcript as well. And you can input in different languages, and now you can also output in different languages, whereas that used to be just part of the Prime version. But you can now input and output in different languages. So you, for example, could be speaking in French, and it will then output. It will then create a text version of what you said, but it will summarize it. It will remove all the ums and the ahs and things like that, and it will also give you the original transcript. And then in the paid for version, you can do unlimited notes. You can also have tagging as well, which is really cool for organizing your notes. You can download the audio as well, but you have to do it between sort of 15 and 20 minutes after it, or there's a limit of, I think, 15 or 20 minutes after that it's deleted. So you have to do it straight away.
Oh, okay.
You can also upload
Cool.
audio to the interface and it will transcribe it for you as well. It's amazing. And I actually, because I was so keen about it, I got in contact with the founder, Louis Pereira, who's based in India.
Cool.
And I said, could we record a StreamYard interview? And he said, yeah, no problem. So we recorded, I've put it in the chat, but it's on my YouTube channel. It's a 25-minute interview when I just asked him about AudioPen and how it could be used, particularly in languages. And yeah, it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous tool. I use it every day.
That's so cool. I'm going to check that out. Thank you so much for the recommendation. I have one question here. What do your students use for AI currently? That's such a great question. Currently, my students are mostly using Grammarly, which is something they have built into everything. They also have been experimenting with ChatGPT. I teach all high school students, so they can use ChatGPT. But again, I would say if you teach younger students, check out whether or not they're allowed to do that. I think that for the most part, my students have been wanting to do more image-based AI things. So I had one student who is using the image in Canva because it's part of our school. She was part of our school website subscription, and that was fine with me. I would say that when my students are using AI though, I want to keep having an open conversation about it. I want to know what they're using and what they're using it for, because I think that a lot of the fear is sometimes there can be cheating because students will pass off work as their own that they've created with AI. And I would say that there are some ways you can avoid that. I think giving them feedback throughout their writing processes and throughout the process can help, because all of a sudden you'll see a whole dump of text. You'll say, your history looks a little strange on your document here. What happened there? I would also say that if students are going to use AI, figure out what they're using it for. I think that for some students, using it for scholarly articles can be really helpful because there can be so much information out there. So to be able to kind of dig through and see what it's for, that can be really helpful. I did a mock court case with my students. I had them look up different scholarly articles on Roman law. And so I helped them use Perplexity to do that. And they loved that. It was a really fun tool to use for that. And so having them do that and make it above board, like, yes, we're all using this tool. Let's talk about what it's doing well, what maybe it's not doing well, and really kind of walking them through that process was really helpful. What I don't want is for students to use it in a last minute panic because they didn't do something. That's something that they should not be using generative AI for. If it's something, I think sometimes students will get kind of that deer in headlights reaction when you tell them they have a creative project. And sometimes something like generative AI can help them think of ideas. But if students are using generative AI for that, I want to talk to them about it and ask how they're using it. What questions are they asking? What kind of prompts are leading them to these things? And I think having that together and kind of like coming together over that is going to be really helpful. Someone else asked, should AI mention the authors in your opinion, as we do with quotes? That's really interesting. I think that there are ways to cite AI now, which is really important. But I also think it needs to be described what exactly is going on when you're using AI. AI should be a tool that you use like together with you. It shouldn't be something that's doing something completely for you, if that makes sense. Someone else asked, we as parents, what can we do for our children so that they do not abuse the use of AI? I think that with so many things, sometimes students are going to do it, but I would also say the more proactive we can be with conversations around AI and what it can and cannot do, and what it morally and ethically can and cannot do, or should not do, can be really, really helpful. I mean, I have a 9-year-old, and even my 9-year-old knows about generative AI. And so it's interesting. She knows that you can do things with it. I have another question. Do you have an AI policy in your school? Yes. And I think that right now, there are some teachers that are using AI, and there are some teachers who are saying absolutely not in my classroom. And I think in our policy, we made it clear that AI use is to the discretion and the supervision of the teacher. So if you're going to be using AI, you have to do it with your teacher's permission and also your teacher will understand the parameters of how you're using AI. And you cannot use AI outside the parameters that are set by your teacher, because it's just like any other resource you might use for cheating. I think that if you are taking a test and you're using your textbook to help you, and that's not something you're allowed to use, it's the same as using AI for something. Another question, will AI transform exam expectations and the learning progress? That's a really good question. I think that just like during the pandemic, when all of a sudden we had to come up with all these questions that were ungoogleable because our students were online, we are going to have to think about what is it that our students need so that they don't let AI take over their voice. And I think that's believing in the power of students, giving them agency and power over the power of their voice. Their voice matters. Someone else should not be speaking for you. Some generative AI robot shouldn't be doing that. That's your voice. And so I think that's really important. I also think we need to think about asking good questions, because if students are going to be using AI, and I know that a lot of occupations are going to be using AI, so as they enter the workforce, AI is going to be a fact of life. So teaching students how to use it effectively and how to use it in a way where they're not crossing ethical and moral boundaries, but using it within parameters is going to be really important for the future. Interesting. I do not think AI will replace teachers. No, because part of what makes teaching special is actually the relational part of teaching, the SEL benefits of teaching, creating a relationship of trust and creating confidence within the student is what is at the heart of teaching. I will be psyched if 20 years from now, my students know Latin, but if my students felt cared for and confident in their abilities in my classroom, that is what I really care about. If they felt like they were in a place where they could be nurtured and they could grow and they could be creative, that's what really matters to me. That's a great question.
I just ask a question. Is that okay? So in relation to like the policy you were talking about in your school, is there anything around teachers inputting student work to give feedback on or use a rubric with to mark? But the reason I asked that question is because on Facebook groups on a series from higher education in Australia that I was watching recently, I've done like sort of three episodes so far, and it's really fascinating. One of the things that came up with this whole issue around student privacy and the fact that it's students' IP, etc. And therefore we should be asking them first if we can put in their work into ChatGPT, because obviously unless you turn it off in ChatGPT, that data is being sent to OpenAI. Is there anything within your policy around that, or do you have any thoughts about that? Because obviously we're all grappling with this still, but any reflections on that particular issue?
Yeah, sure. I think that being in the schools where we are, oftentimes we're already using things like Turnitin. And so that's something that's doing the exact same thing as taking all of the students' work and putting it into this giant database. And so that's been happening since, gosh, I was in college 20 years ago. And so that's been going on for a really long time. And so if we are now just considering the moral implications of that, I think it's a little late for that. And so I wonder though, because I think students do have a right to privacy. And so I do think that we need to be above board if we are going to be using it for that. And I also think that we should not be doing it, especially in the United States, with students under 13. Because if we're doing it with students under 13 without parental permission, that's a problem. And so we need to make sure that we are getting the proper permissions from the parents about their students. And so it's an interesting quandary though, because I feel like in some ways it's making everything so much easier by doing it. But at the same time, I would never want a student to feel like I was abusing their work that way. So I don't have a great answer for that, but I do know it's been going on for many, many, many years. And it's before the advent of AI.
I think that's a great answer
really
about Turnitin. I mean, would you say that with Turnitin that they've asked for parental permission, or is it normally used at university level, would you say, Turnitin? Or is it used at K-12 level as well in the States?
It's used in both because it actually integrates with Google Classroom. So for students who are using Google Classroom, you can actually turn it in on if you have one of the Google for Education enterprise accounts. And so it's something that I think schools have to consider. And I'm not saying I have all the answers because I don't. It's just It's something we've been doing that I didn't even realize really until I was looking into it more deeply, that this is all going into a big database. Sorry if you hear loud noises, that's my children. I think that it's a good time for schools to reconsider what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing. So even if the choice is that you continue using it for student work, I think it's an important time to take a moment to reflect on that.
Yeah, and I agree totally. And I think that being sort of part of different Facebook groups talking about AI with educators, you're seeing people talking about lots of questions around rubrics, around marking work, around report cards. And there are some people talking about, privacy, and you should be very careful about the personal data and that you're putting into ChatGPT or in AI in general. So I think it's really, really important that we have this conversation and then we work out work out a policy that would be appropriate for that. I mean, Helen, do you want to come in on this maybe from an SLT point of view? What would you say around this sort of issue?
Sorry. Well, as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, because I have been around for so long, that we've had these conversations about IT and technology right from the beginning. The most common one tends to be about, well, what do you do about people using Google Translate or that sort of thing? And I think, I've been listening to what you've been saying, and I think that idea that in the end, I guess you do need a policy, whatever it is, you need a policy. But just to be realistic and pragmatic, that people are going to use these. And so you do have to account for that. But actually, as you've said so rightly, Maureen, to make it that you're teaching people how to use these. And I have already always done that. It may be that I'm just a bit lazy when it comes to marking sixth form essays. But, I do encourage them to look at it, use it before it gets given in to me. Just check that you've looked at it as well. I mean, I would be able to tell if everything has been generated just by AI, because you in the class you know what their standards are, don't you? And they know that and they'll understand that as well. But I definitely use it now. Whenever I write a letter in French, even though I've got a French degree, I check it first of all with DeepL, always. So it's being realistic about it, isn't it? Really, is that help? I don't know if that's helpful.
Absolutely, but in
Absolutely,
relation to teachers using it to mark student work, do you think that you would have to have some sort of parental permission to do that, or have a conversation around that? I just think, what would your sort of official line be on that, Helen?
Yeah. I'm not going to commit to that, because really I haven't got a responsibility for that. But I think you're right, what you're saying, Maureen, about the fact that people have to be over 13 anyway to have their work to process it. I mean, you're making me think about it, because I do process some sixth form work, so I've put it into DeepL to just check, well, is that a word or isn't it? Because sometimes you can spend ages marking things, can't you? But no, I think that's a very good question to ask, and perhaps one we ought to look into. So I'm not being very wise on that, am I?
No, it's fine. I think it's important. Yeah, it is an important question to ask for sure, and we're all grappling with this. I mean, another question, Maureen, is about bias, isn't it? That people talked about bias. There's a really, really interesting Netflix documentary that I watched a couple of weeks ago called Coded Bias. I think it is Coded Bias, CODE. EDBIAS, and it's all around. It's about an hour long, and it's all around how because of the people who basically put together AI or fed the content into ChatGPT and other such tools, that is going to have its natural human biases. And they were doing, for example, they were showing that there was a lot of information about sort of image recognition and the fact that we don't give permission for that. And they had say 4 photos that came up, and they had different percentage matches. So they had like a white male, and it was like 99%, 100% match. And then they had other ethnicities, and it was much more like sort of 70%, 60% match, which was just terrible. So in other words, it was biased towards white males essentially, and they were saying in the program that is based on because of the content which has been fed into it. And they had lots of US examples as well as UK examples of how you can be walking along the street and you can be stopped by the police because your face matches a certain profile. And they were showing examples of people that were basically being wrongly accused. Now that's a whole new issue, but I mean, certainly about bias, any recommendations on how we should always think carefully about the output that ChatGPT or other AIs produce, because it may be showing biases?
I would say definitely taking everything with a grain of salt, reading through everything. Also, Harvard has an amazing implicit bias quiz that I have sometimes used within my teaching to have students recognize bias. It not passing judgment, but just recognizing that no matter what they're doing, they do have bias. And I think that, again, not passing judgment, because we all have bias. We all have bias because we all have a wide range of different experiences, but actually experiencing it by taking a quiz about it is really interesting, and it gives you a moment of pause and reflection. And so I think combining the teaching of ChatGPT with the ethics of it is really important, and setting clear parameters and making sure that there are clear expectations for students about what is okay and what is not okay is really, really important, because this is not going away. You can't just banish generative AI away. I know some school districts in the United States have banned it entirely, but what are students going to do? They're going to walk down to Starbucks and use the Wi-Fi in Starbucks and access it. It's not going away. And so I think that we need to learn to work with it and see what it can do for us, rather than come at it with a place of deficit, like this is so terrible. Like, no, this is what it's going to be going forward. So let's figure out a way to work with it. And I also always tell my students, yes, you can use this generative AI, but the real superpower of human beings is our creativity. So as human beings, it's never going to be more creative or make as many connections as we will. And so thinking about that and really believing in the power of our own creativity is very important. I know that's kind of a very optimistic viewpoint on it, but I really do believe that. And I think that we have a lot to learn from using generative AI. And it's really important that we set clear boundaries with it as well.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well framed. And I think that in general, there is a lot of fear mongering around AI. And what we try to do, not only in this Tilt webinar, but in other Tilt webinars, the one that I mentioned already, is try to really promote the positive and say how it can be really useful. And there are some people that say, oh, it's going to kill creativity. And like yourself, I feel the opposite. I feel that it's a way of avoiding the blank page, as it were. It's a way of getting some ideas down, a bit of scaffolding, and then be inspired and then think, oh yeah, I'm going to go off in that direction. That's actually really a good idea. Or maybe an idea that I'd done years before that I'd forgotten about. And then it takes you off on a whole new avenue. And to me, it's actually a way of channeling my creativity rather than...
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I feel the same way. It's inspired me to do more writing in my classroom, because my students were so excited when I started doing things like that. And so I'm like, wow, okay, I can do writing, and it can check and make sure I don't have grammar errors in my Latin. Woohoo. So there's so many positive things to come out of this. And again, I think communication is key around this. Communicating with students, communicating with any constituents you're working with. That means faculty members, that means parents, making sure parents know that you're using it. I think that if we don't want to keep it a secret, we want to make sure that everything's open and above board when you're trying to use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to add, there's we get a magazine in this household about the latest in PC, and I can't remember what the magazine's called, but I read the one about AI recently, and part of it was in this article talking about AI, what it could do. And at the end, the challenge was, one of the paragraphs in this article was written using ChatGPT. Can you guess which one it was? And I was intrigued, and it was obvious which one it was. And both David and I spotted it, and I got in touch with the writer on Twitter just to say, look, I've got to know, is this correct? And you can tell. So I mean, that might be a little exercise to give people and to students as well. What is it that makes it so that you can tell? And it was just too good, and it didn't have any sort of personal view on it. It was not written in, it was written in very long sentences, whereas the bit that she wrote would every now and then have a short sentence just to make it a bit more interesting. You know, as language teachers, we're always saying, oh, make your language better by making long sentences. Well, actually, that's not how people really write, is it? And if you want to impress and use, there are stylistic features that you would use. Anyway.
No, absolutely. And that's what I tell my students. I say, that's great that you can write with ChatGPT, but I want to hear your voice. That's what it's really about. We are teaching our students to use their voices. And I think that, yes, Can you use generative AI to help you with things? Absolutely. But overall, I would be much happier to hear you say it in your voice. And so I think, and be confident in that, because your voice is growing. I have some students that are very confident writers, and I have some students that are still learning, and that's okay. And I think the more that they get the opportunities to do it, the better. But again, generative AI can help with ideas, which is pretty cool.
I've just read what Chris has written, and it's absolutely the case. Your passion is infectious.
Thank you.
Are really lucky. This whole thing about being positive and making people feel that they can do it, because I remember the years and years ago when I did my training, there was a phrase NTLE, a non-threatening learning environment, as being key to learning. You absolutely have to have that environment before you're going to try things out, which is what you clearly generate.
It's true.
Great.
Yeah, I truly believe in that. It's really important, right?
Amazing. It's been such a fantastic webinar. I knew it would be, Maureen, but you've been so generous and so enthusiastic, and showed so many sort of cutting edge tools. It's been fantastic, and thank you to everyone with their questions in the chat. I think we've seemed to have done all the questions now. I can see we're just having a few lovely comments to finish off with. So if you're happy to sort of stay on once we sort of stop recording, as it were, for a few more questions, and maybe want to have recorded, etc., then I think that'll be really cool if that's a possibility.
Sure.
And again, thank you for sharing your presentation. I'm sure that it will get, well, I know in fact from the chat that people will be taking some time probably over the summer to explore some of these tools and plugins and so on and so forth, and extensions, and seeing how it can make their workflow easier and more efficient, and how they can consider using the tools with their students as well. So thank you so much, Maureen, on behalf of
it's my pleasure.
and the Tilt webinars. It's been a real pleasure tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so great to finally meet you over Zoom. So
well, hopefully
years of
we'll
following
meet
each other, yeah.
sometime. That'd be amazing as well. Helen, do you want to wrap us up maybe, as you normally do?
Yes. Oh, am I still here? Well, I just asked David, actually, who is within a school context, what about policies to do with AI? So that's just to explain why I was looking somewhere else. And so what I will do is definitely at the end of this, I'm going to be writing a message to everybody who's signed up with a link to everything, including that article. But now back to just saying thank you so much. First of all, Joe, great that you find people, these wonderful people from across the world. And I love it. I still get excited when I see people come from all over the place here into my little room here. But really, above all, Maureen, thank you so much for all the content you've given us, the enthusiasm. And I really like the fact that we've now got something we can go away and play with afterwards, because your very first comment about the fact that it's lovely to be able to look at something afterwards and then explore yourself. You've got to do that with technology. But thank you so much. And I'm sure that we're all going to be keeping in touch, aren't we? That would be great.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Have fun playing.
Well, I'll stop the recording now. But as Joe said, anybody who wishes to stay for the after party, you're very welcome to do so. Okay. So I'll stop the recording.